Welcome to Signs, the podcast about signs. Each episode centers on a single sign chosen by the guest. It might be visual or auditory, an icon, symbol, index, gesture, inscription, or object, whatever speaks to them. We examine how the sign functions, the contexts in which it appears, and how it's interpreted. Guests come from semiotics, linguistics, and beyond, and episodes are recorded in French or English. This week, I'm delighted to receive Dara Theodora. Dara is a Vermont-based visual artist and writer. Her work draws on mythology, literature, and symbolic imagery to explore modern anxieties, fractured perception, and how humans create meaning through the stories they repeat. So hello, Dara Theodora. I'm delighted that you accepted this invitation.
So excited.
Mainly because this sign that is the visual for signs is actually what you're going to talk to us about today. Without further ado, could you tell us a bit about the sign that you chose for today's episode?
Of course. I'm going to refer to this as the W gesture. And if you're visually impaired or for some reason can't see this image, what it essentially is a hand gesture where the middle finger and the ring finger are held together and the index and the pinky finger are flexed away from the two middle digits. So it kind of looks like a W. Another way to think of it is like the inverse of the Vulcan gesture. So that might be a little more familiar to people. And often the W gesture is played across the chest. Not always, which will become important later. And you might see this sign referred to as the Loyolan gesture. I've also seen the dart claw or like the triad claw. So that goes into some spooky areas. But yeah, we're going to say it's the W gesture in this conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, I came across this gesture fairly recently, actually, about a year ago for the first time. And it's a gesture that crops up in a lot of Renaissance art. I think actually the first time I saw it was the Marie de Medici.
Yes, by Bronzino, I think.
So this gesture crops up across many different artists.
Yeah, so I would say frequently you see El Greco and Bronzino, as you mentioned, use it a lot. But really, you see it all across Europe, all the way into the 19th century. And you could probably correct me on the pronunciation, but Bugara, the guy who did a lot of like very beautiful Roman women and stuff in the 19th century. So really, you see it across the board. And it's portraits of famous figures such as Christopher Columbus. The Medicis. There's 26 portraits using this of Cosimo de' Medici, intellectuals, scientists, and also allegorical paintings. So like angels, religious figures. Again, it's mostly seen in portraiture, but yeah, it's just all across the board, everywhere you can look, starting in the early 1500s.
And indeed, when one begins to remark this sign, it does tend to pop up in everywhere one looks. It's quite intriguing, and indeed it's intrigued many people across the centuries, I suppose.
Similar to you, I started just noticing that pattern. Like, what is this? What does this mean? Because to me, anyway, it's not a natural gesture. It takes your flexing fingers across. It's not comfortable, and I would not want to sit for hours as an artist painted my hands doing this gesture. So that to me made me think, well, maybe this actually means something. And so that's how I started saying, digging into, what does this mean, if anything?
Well, what did you find? Because the only thing I can remember reading about it was that the gesture, which is effectively very uncomfortable if you try to. I think some people have a natural tendency for
I
their
think so.
hand to be for their fingers to separate in that manner, but it's not very common. So the one theory I had read about was that it was the Madonna, the breastfeeding situation going on with
Yeah, yeah.
the nipple between the
Mhm.
fingers that made it actually, it would make it actually easier to do that sign. But then I think you wrote about it. But then why would men use that same sign
Right,
for
right, 100%.
themselves? Yeah.
Also, I was, like, researching this a little more, last night. It occurred to me that when this started cropping, that's when the Reformation was happening, and so it seems like, and the whole discussion about, well, how much should we actually be worshiping Mary and, like, the mother goddess figure? So it seems to me a little unlikely these powerful men would even maybe want to dive into that by using this gesture, in
Mm.
addition to just associating with womanhood, which, um, even today, most men, maybe don't wanna do that.
Yes, yes. Like it is hard to imagine that the armor-clad knight,
Mhm.
or would want to associate with the act of
ISIS.
breastfeeding.
Yes.
Yes, it's yeah. So if that's an interesting point, actually, the Reformation, because clearly there is something going on with this sign.
Mhm.
Although no one has yet sort of discovered what exactly.
So I can go through some of the more popular theories that I've kinda run into.
Yeah, great. Yes, I'd love to hear them.
So, one of the really popular ones that I've run across is that it is a sign of crypto-Judaism. So when, Spain basically in, I think, 1492 issued the Alhambra Decree, this was basically saying to the Jewish people in Spain, "You need to convert or get out." And so a
Right.
lot of people, and I think I would probably do this, were like, "Yeah, I'm totally converted," and continue on their life. And so people have said, "Well, actually, no, this symbol is like a sign that this person has not converted." Well, if it's illegal to be Jewish in Spain at this point, why would you flaunt it? Is sort of my main question. I don't know. It doesn't seem to ring true to me. And then when you go further into details, like the sign seen, not just in Spain, um, Bronzino is based in Florence, and this is a place at the time where Jewish people could practice openly. I don't know. So it just that also doesn't make sense. Why would you be hiding it in a place where you could practice openly? This gesture's seen about 2 decades before the Alhambra Decree, so I don't know. That doesn't ring true to me either. There's a temporal issue.
Yes, I suppose that was quite a compelling. But yes, it's just too widely spread for it to be some kind of shibboleth,
Mm, mm,
and the uptake as well. I
mm.
can't imagine that. Well, what would the motivations for the uptake of such a sign by someone like Mario de Medici be?
Right,
Yeah,
100%. That doesn't
yeah.
make sense.
So, okay, so that's the first the first theory.
A lot of these theories, they're sort of symbols of the in-group, right? Or a secret, like, you're not really part of. So another one is, like, the Loyolan, gesture, and this is, basically, it's a sign of penance for, the Jesuit order. Again, I didn't see much evidence. The order was founded, again, in 1540, I think, so, again, there's a temporal issue. And I've only seen one example of a portrait of Saint Ignatius, and it's, like, really blurry and very obscure. So it seems like this was picked up on and has such a great name that people just kinda added to it and just assumed that it was the truth. Also, this sign is held on helmets, it's held at the hip occasionally, frequently on the chest, but it's held in all sorts of places. So if it is meant to represent, like, I don't know, Christ's wound at his side, I just don't see how that could be true as well.
Hmm.
Or maybe it is true in certain situations. It doesn't seem to be across the board, in my opinion.
So that was Loyola version of
Mhm.
this. So the idea behind that is that it was a sign of penance, so
I don't know.
to publicly show that one had sinned, that, yeah, penance. Yes. I think there was a particular painting that included that in your notes beforehand.
Yeah, it's hard to find. I linked to it on my blog, but it's
Yes,
a
it's on
really
your blog as well,
yeah,
so it's there.
it's a grainy image. I didn't post it, but I have linked to it.
Yes, the Bronzino. I very much enjoyed this this sentence. Also, Bronzino's figures are cutting, dashing figures, especially the portrait of a young man who isn't going to repent anything.
No, he's not.
So-
Well, I do like I this is a little off topic, but, going into art museums and you see younger people engage with art in, like, a humorous manner, but they're still engaging with the art, I think can be kind of a fun tool to play with to educate people.
True as well. I'm sure there's some truth in what you're sort of alluding to there.
Yeah,
So
he looks like a dashing young rake. I don't think penance is his thing.
yes. So that's theory number 2. Are there any
Theory number
more?
2. Yeah. There's one I have to go into that I don't put much stock into, but I think
Mm.
especially with the modern age, you're gonna see it online if you look for this. And that's that the sign is a symbol of Freemasonry or the Illuminati. I personally think when there's not sort of a standardized answer, people will go in, fill in what they want the answer to be. Um, so they think the W gesture is kind of a sign of a global conspiracy. We'll see people take like they will take photos of public figures waving and just say, see, it's a sign. It is a sign. Anyway, so I have to mention that. It goes into some dark places very quickly. I do
Oh
not put
gosh.
any stock in this. I know. It's very upsetting.
What do you think of the notion that perhaps in, at the origin of that,
Mm,
without talking about Illuminati, but at least, a certain level of Freemasonry, or
mhm.
that must have been, you're talking of in-grouping.
In group,
And
yeah.
I can imagine, Cosimo de' Medici sort of wanting to
Yeah,
have, his version of a MAGA cap.
right.
The analogy isn't very poetic there, but never mind. Yeah, I can imagine rich bankers doing something like that quite easily, actually.
I can too. Yeah, especially if they've paid for a master artist and be like, "I want that sign. I want to hold that." Yeah, maybe it is like a symbol of the haves and the have-nots. We are the haves that are elegant digit. So we have kinda talked about the in-group, and the theory to me that is the most convincing is sort of one that branches across and focuses more on the commonality between these images. Potentially, and that's that maybe it is a sign of affirmation or an oath. And, I don't know how strongly I feel about this, but to me, this is the most convincing. And then as an American, you put your hand on your heart every single morning to pledge allegiance to the flag.
Of course you
Oh.
do. We won't say anything.
It's not my favorite. Anyway, so I first encountered this in the Museo del Prado, and it's a quite striking image by El Greco, El Caballero de Mano a Pecho, I think. It is this dashing figure in black with a ruffle at his neck and at his hand, which kind of accentuates the gesture, and he has the W gesture at his chest, and he's looking directly at the viewer. Um, so the Museum del Prado states that he is taking oath, I think to his king. And so that to me is very interesting. And then later I came across in the 17th century, this English author named John Bullard decides he's going to write about all the hand gestures ever and codify them in a book. Um, and he writes this book called I think, Chirologia, and it's a whole book about hand symbols and gestures. And I came across it. I came across the W gesture, and it says it's a sign of affirmation. In Latin, I'm not going to even try to pronounce it. But basically, it's a sign of affirmation, and in his text, the hand is pointed a little more up than some of the other examples that we see, where the hand's splayed a little more against the chest, but otherwise, it's very similar. And so affirmation's very broad, but I feel like, one, to John Buller, this is obviously what the gesture meant to him. But you can make an argument that you can be pledging an oath to your God, your king, your country. So it's a very loose and broad. But so for me, it's been the most convincing argument.
Yes, that does sound quite convincing, actually, given, as you said, the existence of so many examples of this hand
Mm,
sign across the board, across centuries, across countries. So this idea that it could simply be the sign of an oath of the
yeah.
person, the subject.
Or,
Yes, yes,
or like
that's
a sign that they're accepting of this greater power or affirmation that I don't know, they're a part of, like, for example, Christopher Columbus, like, you can easily you're like, "Oh, okay, of course." You can have an oath easily to Queen Isabella or whoever. And then this gentleman with El Greco, that rings very true. Some of the others, I don't know, but if I had to go with a theory, that would be the one I would choose. Because you can, like, even Christ carrying the cross and the photo, of this podcast, it's almost a affirmation to his own fate, his upcoming demise, perhaps. So,
it's almost a pragmatic use of the hand then in this
yeah.
sense. Is there a certain amount of humility in that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Perhaps. And of course, yes, but it's not always on the heart, is it? As you mentioned before,
correct.
there are
Correct.
many poses that can be found with the same W gesture on the hip.
Right, and so I do think, the human hand can only be held in so many ways. So maybe in some instances, it is an oath. Maybe in some instances, it just looks really good, and, like, all your peers are seeing using it.
Was going to come to that actually. I was going to ask you as an artist, to what extent do you think there's an aesthetic motivation in
Yeah.
this? Could there have been a time where perhaps for the artist this just looks better than painting a hand differently?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. Recently, I was watching a Kim Burns documentary on da Vinci, and an artist in there, and I'm forgetting his name, which I feel really bad about. He said that art is a series of choices, and that really rings true to me as an artist because you're thinking about your color, form, what layer. If you have an idea of where the painting will be, maybe you're thinking about how that's gonna intersect with that canvas site is just et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's hard for me to imagine that, I don't know, like, this must have had some meaning, at least in a artistic way. So maybe aesthetically, it just looks I mean, I personally, I'm in love with it. El Greco's versions of it are so elegant to me, and I think his are kind of the most accentuated. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Um yeah, I think, these portraits as well, they cost a lot of money to make.
Mm.
And symbols frequently in portraits are trying to say something in addition to looking good. And maybe the saying something, it could be power, it could be your wealth, your creativity. It could also just be that you have great taste. So maybe the sign is this like, I have great taste. This is the thing that is in vogue. I know this. You might not know this, but I know this.
Mm. The dominant classes, I'm holding my hand like this, and
Yeah.
yes, and those who know, perhaps. I think I've scrolled up. I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this, that's not much use, but I'm currently looking at Grace Dalrymple Elliott by Thomas Gainsborough, 1754. Yes, it's quite
Yes.
remarkable, isn't it?
Yes. Very romantic, very beautiful. Um, and just very elegant. Again, just so elegant.
Yes, so the lines of the hand, of course, I'm just very excited about there being possibly some pragmatic
Mm,
supplementary information in this gesture, but it could simply be the artist. Did it begin with an artist or with the subject? We'll never know.
yeah, that's a really good point. I don't know.
That's okay. So what's you were saying your favorite versions of this particular gesture
Mm,
are painted by El Greco?
yeah, I would say so. Yeah. I just think his use of contrast is so stark that it really makes it pop.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and it's so lovely, and it's not like overly detailed. That you kind of get lost in the shadows. It's just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's funny because this gesture's continued well into today in the form of anime.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, I haven't looked into that as much, but, I see it occasionally pop up online on, forums and be like, "What does this mean?" And it's an anime show in the intro that some main characters doing it. So, again, it looks great.
Gosh, well, I'll have to try and find that.
I could send
So
it to
if it's
you.
popping up in anime, that's quite a long journey for this sign to go around. I
It
mean,
is.
what's really tempting is to conduct some kind of study
Mm,
to
mhm.
ask people just to see if there is any sort of natural
100%.
inclination to place their hand like that, to get a decent sample size of people, and ask them
Yes.
to place their hand on their heart, and then
Also, the research that I've done is very European based. Like, I would love to know if in other cultures, if it's as common.
yeah. I mean, the commonality in works of art, as you said, these are very expensive. And,
Mm,
to have an oil painting made
mm.
of oneself, that's not really going to give us an idea of the population, really.
Maybe somebody out there has a piece of information that ties it all together.
So what you say another stronger, albeit more boring case could be made that this gesture has undergone many iterations over the years, and that the human hand can really only move in so many ways. We can try and extrapolate on that just a little bit
Let's do it.
about this idea of that, the when the subject of a painting is the human body, and you are aiming for some kind of realistic representation of that human body, even if it's stylized, there's only so far you can go in the poses.
Right.
Like you say, there's only the human hand can only really move in so many ways. And suppose that anything else would just be because hand gestures they're very salient, aren't they? They
Yeah.
automatically say things. So I suppose as an artist, you have to be quite careful.
Yeah. 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 And I think you bring your own bias or, your own culture's biases to it as well. I know there's some symbols, and you probably know these, but like in Bulgaria or Greece are considered quite vulgar, but here are just like very common. For example, I use a lot of pointing in my work. Just one, I just think it's, I don't know, like higher power pointing or, to this. And um, I recently saw some pieces by Botero who also uses these disembodied hands in his work, and they're very playful. So like it could be serious, it could be playful. So I guess that's all to say that what surrounds the image as well of or the gesture can inform what the artist is trying to say. So I guess why I'm so convinced, at least for the El Greco pieces of the affirmation theory, is because they're very somber and intense paintings. However, when I look at sort of the Bronzino pieces, they don't feel that way to me as much. So, it probably does have different meanings across different places for different artists, because every artist is going to bring their own personal language to their work as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it even could be counterintuitive. It could be
Mm,
that because when I look at these works with the sign. Sometimes it looks quite, no, I wouldn't say tortured, but stiff. But I can't work out whether it's the hand that's painted in a very elegant manner anyway, or if it's because it's in that particular formation that it lends a supplementary aspect of grace to the pose.
Right, like the game's rule.
Yeah, no, it's just absolutely. Sorry, this is like the worst thing to do for a podcast is just start looking at paintings online. I really am going to seek out the anime ones. That's just fascinating.
I know.
And to know if they're using it in the same manner, if there's a circularity to this, if they're sort of copying it, or if they've just stumbled. I mean, it can't be sort of a natural.
I definitely need to dive into that more. I haven't checked out the animes as much. I think it's time.
Okay. So to conclude, the W is the sign of an oath. Seems to be your particular favorite. For
at least the Spanish paintings in the 1600s. That would be what I would go with. Otherwise, I struggle to, lay it across the board and be like, this is the one.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for taking part in this.
Thank you.
Signs is a relatively new podcast about signs. So I'm very pleased to have had an artist come talk to us about this very intriguing sign, which seems to be here to stay, apparently. So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So there'll be all the information on the episode website and links to Dara's work as well. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been an absolute joy.
Likewise.